Hi guys, welcome back to another video, and today we're gonna be crocheting a purse with you guys, and I actually didn't have one started, so this one's gonna be from scratch completely. And I just made a slip knot on my hook, which I'm using the 5mm hook H, and I will be using a macrame yarn, and I will try to show you guys the result of what the purse looks like in my next video. So we first chain 17, and then we skip the first stitch, and then we single crochet into the next stitch, and we do that for the next row as well. And this is what I'll be doing right now with you guys. The story that I found for you guys today, it takes place in Christmas time, so I thought it would be appropriate to talk about this story because the holiday season, I know it's gonna be posted after Christmas time, but there's other holidays like New Year's, and actually I was gonna say that in Eastern Europe, where I'm from, in Ukraine, they celebrate different other holidays in the winter time, like Old New Year's. There's also Orthodox Christian New Year's, which is also celebrated on the 7th of January. So if you want reasons to celebrate something in December or mostly January, just look in Julian calendar, which still follows the old holidays and stuff. So, and I hope you guys had a very Merry Christmas. I know this video will come out after Christmas already, so I hope that you guys had a good time with your family and friends. I hope you have a great New Year's as well. And I know they say that how you spend your New Year's is how your whole New Year's will be. I always try to stay up and spend some time with family or friends on New Year's because I want it to be throughout the whole year. So I want to see those people throughout the whole year. So Latricia White was born on November 30th, 1955. She was 38 years old at the time of the incident. Latricia was working as a nurse at Central Texas Medical Center. This medical center was located in San Marcos in Texas. And Latricia was working at the gastroenterology wing. Latricia had 2 kids, and in 1993 she actually just divorced the father of her 2 kids. Even though they divorced in 1993, Latricia and her ex-husband were actually separated for a while before the divorce. I think for a few years. Latricia actually was living with a boyfriend already in another apartment. I'm actually not sure if Latricia was the one who had custody of her children. I could not find any information that children were living with them. But she was living with her boyfriend, whose name was Lee Walker-Hagen, and he would actually go by the nickname Dub. Latricia and Lee lived in Lockhart, Texas, in an apartment. Lee was a truck driver, and he also had a kid with his ex-wife, Kay, whom he divorced in 1990, but he would still see his son from time to time. Kay Williams would bring her son and his son as well to spend time with his dad some of the weekends. Kay actually had another son with a different man, and she had full custody of the two children. Lee's son, Chance, was 9 years old, and he loved to spend time with his dad. Now let me tell you about Lee Walker-Hagen. He was actually not a nice guy. He was not a nice boyfriend. He was very controlling. He was very jealous of Trisha all of the time. He was very abusive, and him and Latricia actually fought all the time. He would constantly get upset with Latricia for the smallest things. In fact, his first marriage actually ended because he was very abusive towards his first wife, Kay, and he was actually very abusive to Chance, his son. So when Chance would come over to Trisha and Lee's house when Kay and Lee were already divorced, he was still being abusive to his son, Chance. Now, I don't know if I would continue sending my son to an abusive dad, to someone who was already abusing him before, and she knew that. Because Kay even said herself that she was terrified of him to be around her after they divorced. So if she was so scared and she was sending her son to him sometimes, I don't understand that. So on December 17th, 1993, 9-year-old Chance went over to Trisha and Lee's house for Christmas. So he was planning to stay there until after Christmas Day, and everything was going good until December 23rd, when Chance accidentally forgot to turn off the kitchen sink, and he overflowed the sink. So both Trisha and Lee started yelling at Chance, and I'm not sure if this was the reason, but Lee actually ended up walking out during the night. He packed his things and he said, "I'm leaving the house and never coming back." So he packed his things and ended up leaving on the night of the 24th, which was a Christmas Eve. And then the next day he actually returned with his bags, and they all ended up having a good time on Christmas. And how do we know that they had a fight? Is because the neighbors heard the fight. It was so big, and the neighbors could hear it because they lived in an apartment complex. And Chance actually ended up calling his mom, Kay, from their phone number, Trisha and Lee's apartment, and asking his mom to stay another few days because he was having such a great time with his dad. He got some good gifts, and so he didn't want to leave yet. And his mom allowed him to stay for a few more days. And I wanted to mention that at the end of the third row, we skipped the first stitch. We chained one, skipped the first stitch, and then we single crocheted like we did for the second row. But since we skipped the first stitch, we're gonna have to make up a stitch here. So we're just making up a stitch on the side here, so we have like a round edge and the same amount of stitches, 16. And then we chain one, skip a stitch, and do the same thing. So on December 26th of 1993, Latricia, Chance, and Lee were actually seen by some witnesses dining at a local restaurant, and it looked like they were having a good time. They were chatting, just enjoying eating together. Guys, I found some mistakes, so I'm gonna go back here. The next day, on December 27th, 1993, when Trisha didn't show up to her work, her co-workers became concerned when she didn't show up and she didn't even call in. She would never ditch her job like that, and her co-workers knew that. She was a very responsible nurse. Trisha's dad was also growing concerned because Latricia was actually going to call him the night before, I believe. And she never called him neither the night before or the next day. So he was getting worried. I'm not sure for how long she didn't call, but it was long enough for him to become worried. And she wouldn't pick up the phone when he called the home phone. So Dad decided to go and check himself, because he had an extra key to her apartment, so he decided to enter the apartment. And at first glance, nothing seemed out of place. There were no signs of any forced entry. And it didn't look like anything was moved in the apartment, so everything looked the same as the dad would remember. And then he decided to go to the bedroom of the apartment. actually later determined that Latricia had been dead for almost a day by the time that her dad found her. So I would imagine she looked pretty bad and very stiff. It was also determined that she was shot 6 times with a .22 caliber pistol, and this happened while she was still sleeping. So that's why there were no signs of any struggle, and hopefully she didn't have a painful death. Neither Lee or Chance were seen anywhere at the apartment. And one disturbing and odd thing that was found on scene where Tricia's body was found, in the blood of Latricia, there was one small footprint of a child, and that footprint was determined to be the footprint of Chance, which meant that Chance was actually the witness of Latricia being murdered. Either that or he has witnessed her in that state, because he was close enough to her blood to leave this footprint. And Lee Walker-Hagen right away became a suspect, since he was now missing and he must have had something to do with the murder. Also, this is when police started receiving all these reports from family members that Lee Walker-Hagen was actually very abusive. So police was certain that Lee was the murderer, and they issued a warrant for his arrest. And they were conducting a nationwide search for him. But not only was police looking for him because he was a murder suspect, but also because they were suspecting that he also took Chance with him. So that meant he kidnapped Chance. There was no telling what he could have done to Chance, because he seemed to have kidnapped him. But for what purposes? On December 30th, 1993, so this was 3 days after Latricia was found, police found Tubbs, or Lee's, white Ford pickup. It was found on the side of the road, about 25 miles away from Tricia's house. And it was found in a very high crime area in Austin, Texas. Inside the truck, police found Lee's checkbook, also his wallet. They also found his hunting rifle, and it hasn't been fired from. And in the trunk of his car, they found a spare tire, a toolbox, and also a bunch of presents. And some of these presents haven't even been opened yet. And blood was on some of these presents. It wasn't that much blood as it would be from like a death, but it was enough to have like a serious injury. And right away police started assuming that this is most likely Tricia's blood, so they decided to test it. And they ended up finding out that this actually wasn't Tricia's blood. And because DNA testing was very primitive at that time, not much could be found from blood. So they couldn't really blood. So the Caldwell Sheriff's Department came up with two theories. Either Lee murdered Latricia for some reason we will never know and took off with his son, or both Lee and Chance fell victim to the same people or person that killed Latricia as well. Now we move on to 1994, which is a few months later after the murder of Latricia. And this is when Opie Williams, who is the maternal grandfather of Chance, received a phone call. And on the other line, a young boy's voice was heard by Opie. And the voice was saying, "Help me, help me." Opie said that he could hear somebody snatch the phone from the boy's hands. And this is when the phone was hung up in a harsh manner. And the call was unfortunately interrupted. And the grandfather was adamant and was saying that he knows 100% that this was Chance. He could recognize his voice. But the rest of the family were actually thinking that this was a hoax, that this phone call was just somebody joking around. So Chance and Lee unfortunately have not been seen since that fateful day, and only theories have been floating around. The most popular theory is, of course, the one that makes more sense, is that Lee killed Latricia and took off with his son because he possibly wanted full custody with Chance, and he was tired of having him some weekends. The only problem with that is that Kay Williams, who was Chance's mom, she said even though Lee was very abusive, she does not believe that he could have done that to his son. He loved his son, and he would never do something like that to him. She said he was abusive mostly verbally, and he would never do any harm to his son. She also said the reason why Lee left the house the day when they got into a fight with Latricia on December 23rd is because he didn't want Chance to see him in that kind of state, because he loved him so much. Lee's friends said that they had no idea that he was abusive to his family. They always saw him as a happy-go-lucky guy, and he was very nice to his friends, so they could not even imagine him being abusive. Lee had no prior criminal record. He also didn't have any problems seeing his son. If the reason why he stole him was to gain more custody, most of the time Kay would bring his son anytime he would ask, and anytime Chance would wanna see his dad. So it was not a problem. So Lee's family thinks that Lee and Chance were also victims of foul play. However, Trish's family doesn't think